everybody. Lawrence White. I'm here with my partner, Chris Newhart, my partner in crime, and today we have an awesome guest. Everybody's awesome, but this one's really awesome. We have Doug Wagner. He's a professional comic book writer. He's worked for Image, Marvel, DC.
Oh, not Marvel.
Oh, no Marvel?
Marvel's the only company I haven't worked for.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, well.
Sorry about that.
Still very impressive.
But yeah, Doug's made a really good mark. He looks like a sweet, innocent man, but if you ever read his books, that would tell a different story.
Yeah, something's wrong with me.
And they're awesome. Yeah.
For real.
He writes Plastic for Image, and he also writes The Ride, which has been around for quite a while now.
15 years.
Yeah, and now your studio to begin with was, did you start 12 Gauge?
No.
Oh,
well,
okay.
That actually, yes. I'm co-creator of 12 Gauge. It was Kevin Gardner who's the president, and I kind of started that all together. And The Ride was the first book we put together.
That's awesome. So, let me ask you this. Now, working at Image, I know it's a creator-owned company. Mm-hmm. Everybody, you retain the rights of everything that you have. So, and they got the different inputs. Tom McFarlane, Mark Silvestri, all those guys. But you're your own guy, right?
Right.
But not a partner, though. Obviously.
Oh no,
Right.
Yeah, just one of their many creators like Brian K. Vaughan, you know, and even at the beginning, Robert Kirkman wasn't a partner. He
became a partner.
He became a partner. Mm-hmm. Yep. Once they got him back and Walking Dead started happening.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. And I've checked out Plastic, which is a great book. If you haven't read this, definitely check this one out. Only if you're a certain age. Make sure you're mature before you read this because it's a wild, twisted story. But it's awesome. It's right up my alley.
I think you should stick with the age group versus mature.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's subjective. This day and age. Yeah. But Plastic's really awesome. So how'd you come up with Plastic?
For real.
Honestly, I mean, it's when you're a writer, like things just come to you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I wish there was a way I could tap into it to make it happen on command. But I was on a road trip with Brian Stelfreeze and Eric Layton, and we were going from Atlanta to Baltimore to the Baltimore Con. Uh-huh. And as we're entering the state of Virginia, there's a sign that, and most states have like, welcome to Utah, welcome to Georgia, that kind of thing. This one was like, buckle up, Virginia. And honestly, it's the last line in the book.
I got it.
And so immediately the entire idea came to my head. And so I'm in here with these two sicko, Brian and Eric, and I'm like,
and Brian Stelfreeze is an amazing artist.
Brian's an amazing
He's
person and artist, yeah. And just sat back and like, I have this idea. What do you think? And Plastic is not your normal idea. Mm-hmm. And both of them were like, you have to do it. That's crazy. You have to do it. And honestly, I mean, pretty much the whole story came to me within like 30 minutes.
So can you elaborate on the story and do it justice? Because I can't.
I never have to get past the first sentence, which is Plastic is about a serial killer that's in love with a blow-up doll. And usually people are like, oh. They're either offended and they walk away, or they're like, tell me more. So basically, there's Edwin. He's he considers himself retired. He's a retired serial killer because he's fallen in love with this woman in Virginia who happens to be a blow-up doll. And they're kind of traveling the back, roads of the U.S. and just kind of enjoying each other's company. And somebody is crazy enough to decide to steal Virginia from him. Mm-hmm. So,
you don't want to mess with a serial killer.
Yeah, they don't know he's a serial killer. Just looks like a regular old.
They're about to find out though.
Oh, that's the cool thing about it because you don't really know. He's talking to himself and he's like having conversations with different people, but it's all in his head. So it took me a while to figure. I'm like, what's going on? But then I was intrigued. The way you write, it's awesome because I'm like, okay, I'm getting the flow of it. So he's having conversations with people that isn't there, like his mother, and like one time he tells this girl, he's like, yeah, well, we got to look out for this person, and my mom. And she's sitting in the back seat, and she turns around, she's looking behind her out of the window like, his mom? Like, where? It's awesome that you do it. So he's got all this in his head, and then you start finding all these bits and pieces about him. And even his name you don't find out until probably second issue.
Yeah. And that was on purpose. Like, I want to do that red herring of like, they think because they can't find out anything about him, then maybe he's like FBI or CIA or something. And then
and you even hint at that, kind of taking it off into another. Yeah, it's a whole. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, this is not what you think.
No, it's not at all. And for a comic writer myself, I'm like, okay, I think just when I thought I had it figured out, nope, it was off in another direction.
For real.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really good stuff. Yeah, I loved it. And then the artist too on it is amazing.
Oh, Daniel Hilliard. Yeah. We had Daniel Hilliard. Laura Martin was the colorist, and I mean, if you know anything about comics, I mean, Laura Martin's arguably possibly the best colorist in comics, and we wanted to put together the best team, but Daniel's fantastic to work with.
Yeah, you have the like it starts out with blood and it's on a gas station pump.
Yeah, one of the ride ones I was reading in the strip club, the 2 pages, it looked like you were actually in the club. I've never like seen it like that before.
Yeah.
With 2 pages like that showing the whole inside of a place. It was awesome.
Now that's the ride.
Yeah, that was in
Yeah.
the ride. But I mean, Daniel also did the main story of the ride as well. So the scene he's actually talking about is still Daniel Hilliard.
Oh, same artist?
Yeah,
Okay.
and Daniel actually is an Englishman who lives in Spain, and so we have to we kind of communicate through Skype. Mm-hmm. And amazing guy, like one of the nicest people on the planet. Again, you wouldn't guess by meeting him that he drew this, right? You know, like,
I read one of your books too. I think it was part of the ride. I think I got like the issue was already in the story, but I was reading it or checking it out, and then I came to Comic-Con and I saw you and I was like, "This is the guy that wrote this stuff." Because when you look at it, like we were talking earlier, and I'm like, "No, you don't know this guy. He thinks you're all mild manners." Like, no, you read his stuff.
For real.
You're not gonna offend this guy.
yeah, oh no. And I mean, but Daniel and Laura and I all worked really, really closely together, which was a lot of fun.
You're
so
right.
like, I mean, it wasn't like I can say, "Oh, I wrote the perfect story," and then Daniel drew the page. No, like I would send them stuff, and they would like destroy me, and we'd work on it together to like make the best story we could. And that's the way I like to work.
You need that synergy, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I like online, like through emails and stuff. I can't create that way, but
For real.
you know, we get
So much gets lost in translation.
exactly. But you get late at night, you get a few guys, grab some pizza, you sit down. It's so much better, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I have to work. Yeah, and that's why I came to you because me and Chris work together. We do comic books and. At his coffee shop, I met you guys at a little mini Comic-Con here.
Yeah, at Wasatch Comic Con, Jason Baliff knew who you were and was like, "Yeah, you should talk to this guy." And so we met up, and you were like, "Yeah, I had a team of people, and we used to sit down and make comics and do meetings." And I was like, "Well, we got a space, let's do it."
Yeah, they met me, and then they came back, and then Jason was with you, and he says, "That's our guy." I'm like, "What are you guys talking about?" And then they said,
For
let's
real.
meet at the coffee shop, and that's how Legacy League was born. Yeah, I gotta have that synergy. I gotta sit down and create that way, or I can't. I mean, I can, but it's not the same.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in one of your newer comic books that hasn't come out yet. I don't know how much we can talk about it.
Oh,
but...
we can. No, the individual issues have come out. The trade doesn't come out until April 15th.
Okay, heck
So all of
yeah.
those individual issues are out.
Heck yeah. So at the end, when you do the interviews, I thought that was pretty dope. Like, could you tell people a little bit what it was like to do your own comic book and start from the bottom and just invest everything into it and take it to where it's been? And
I mean, there's so much in that question. You know, it's like, I mean, for years, I wanted to be a comic writer since I was 17. That was my sole purpose. And it took roughly about 20 years to get there. And so you've come to this point where you're like, you're always asking permission, right? Well,
Right.
why won't Marvel Comics promote me or publish me? Why won't this
Right.
company? And at one point, you just finally go, well, why don't I just do it?
For real.
And that's the key.
Amen.
I mean, the key is to just step in and do it, whether you know what you're doing or not. I mean, and
For
it's
real.
funny. I've been reading articles about this lately, like Elon Musk,
Yep.
Bill Gates,
Right.
Steve Jobs. Those guys didn't know what they were doing when they started out.
For real.
I mean, who knew how to build a computer? You know, a
Right.
home computer. Nobody. There wasn't one to base it off, right? So they just
Yeah.
stepped in and started doing it.
It's not your genius. It's not my job. Find
Yeah.
somebody that is their genius and let them help you.
Oh yeah, find your team.
All right.
And basically, you know, me and Kevin Gardner from 12 Gauge, like we sat down one night and just came up and said, you know, let's just do it. And that's how we started.
For real.
Is we just started doing it, and it's there now. Since then, I've been published by DC, and I've worked with Top Cow and Dynamite and a couple other companies, and that's fantastic. There's always something great about being published by a company that gives you some validation.
Right. Build up your resume.
Yeah, but there's nothing more powerful than doing your own thing completely when people tell you you can't, and it comes out and it does well. There's
For real.
because that's you know that's not this isn't Marvel and DC. This isn't Batman. Batman can sell with or without me.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
like being able to do your own thing and just do it and make it happen. It's harder. It's much harder, but it's much
More
more
gratifying.
Oh yeah, much
Yeah.
more
For
gratifying.
real.
when you have your own work. So how did you get started? I mean, like, give us some background. Like, I mean, obviously when you started at 17, but what led up to comic books when you knew this is what I want to do?
It's an interesting journey because like I started writing. You know, I don't know if you guys are young enough to remember when comics were in 7-Elevens and
Oh,
that
yeah,
kind of
spinner
stuff.
racks.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
spinner
yeah.
racks. See, I mean, I
about
started
language.
as a kid. I was like, even at like 5, I was reading stuff like Flintstones and Casper. The stuff that your mom would let you read.
Right.
And then slowly got into like Fantastic Four and X-Men and that kind of stuff. And probably when I was about 14.
So who's the creators on Fantastic Four and the X-Men back then?
Oh well, back then, John Byrne on all of it.
That's
Yeah.
my favorite
Oh,
guy
yeah,
ever.
John Byrne. John Byrne, Chris Claremont on the X-Men stuff is still hands down my favorite. And like, so then it built to the point to where like at 14, comics actually helped me when my dad passed. So it's like one of those really rough times. But comics, like, there were some messages in there that helped me. And then I met a friend, Cully Hamner. He's done a ton
amazing.
of stuff. Oh yeah, fantastic artist. He and I are still good friends. He drew comics. We met in high school, and he was drawing comics then.
I didn't know that.
And I was like, hey, I think I want to write comics. And so we started tinkering with it, and then it just kind of hit me one day when I was 17. And I was like, hey, I want to write comics for the rest of my life. My parents weren't too happy about that. And then it was just that back then, there wasn't the web. There wasn't web comics,
Right.
and not the avenues you have now. It was either pretty much Marvel or DC.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it was a lot tougher to get things going. So basically, it was just like taking a comic, reading it. Did I like it? Why did I like it? What did I not like about it? Just analyze it to death, and then try to write my own scripts and try to do something anywhere close to what I was reading, as far as quality.
And there's no net, so there's like you don't just go on there. How do I do a comic script or a screenplay? It's not there, so
No.
you're finding all, because I used to do all the trade mags like Comics Journal and Wizard and all those. I'd look through those and try and pick up tips because I didn't know how to do it either. So
Yeah, there's no template.
Yeah, right.
And there's no one way to do it. And that's what's, intimidating. And then like trying to think about Marvel and DC, I mean, even now when I'm thinking about doing stuff for Image, I always check myself and remember, like, there's probably 10,000 other people that want to be doing what I'm doing right now.
For real.
Yeah.
And that struggle.
Especially at Image.
Oh yeah. Well, any of them. I mean, there's
Yeah.
people, and that's how much competition you have.
And it's so corporate now too, with a lot like Marvel and DC. That,
Yeah.
it's so editorial driven that it's hard for guys to break in, do an original story with characters already established. Because that's the way I thought it was going to be. Hey, I'll figure out what I'm going to do with Cyclops and Wolverine. No.
And I used to teach at Broadview Entertainment Arts University, where I taught a comic writing class.
Oh, cool.
And I would take them through, like, the problem is, and this might be with everything in the world, I don't know, but in comics, nobody ever breaks in the second way twice, including writers.
Right.
And so you have this formula that they say, hey, write scripts, send them in, and if we like you, we'll hire you. I don't know anybody that's ever done it that way.
Right.
And so, like, there's all these crazy stories of, like, one creator he worked for Image for a while, played Halo online, found out that one of the people on his team, well, actually, it happened the other way. Brian Michael Bendis was on his team on Halo, and found out who he was and went, well, I like your work. Have you ever considered working for Marvel? I mean, what are the odds of that
Yeah,
happening?
right. Exactly.
Nobody's ever going to do
Best
that twice.
video game ever.
Yeah, nobody's going to do that twice.
Brian Michael Bendis writes Superman right now, just so you can,
Yeah,
in case you
just
don't
a
know.
little-
Yeah. And you meet him on a video game, hey, online.
Yeah, I mean,
What are
that's
the
one of the
chances?
stories I've heard,
Yeah,
and
right.
it's just like, you're like, wow, how do you make this happen? And you don't know.
Right.
You just, it's such a
insane.
crazy industry.
So you're friends with Colney Hamner, which he was the artist on Red.
Oh, yeah.
The story, that Bruce Willis movie that went on.
Two of 'em.
Yeah, there's two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has nothing to do with the story, totally different story, but but that was cool. So you grew up with it. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
We're geeking out. Everybody, can you go away? We're going to talk about this. That's awesome. So you're 14, 17. You're like, I'm going to do this. So what was the first thing you created, or?
Oh, well, actually, at that point, Cully Hamner and I had already created like our own super team.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we actually drew a couple of pages, or we worked on a couple of pages together, and we had this team, and we were pitching it. One small company at one point picked it up, but then they went out of business before we could get it published. Kind of one of those kind of like struggles of kind of things. But
I
it
did
was what were the name of those? I can't remember the name of the team. I can remember some of the characters, but it was very X-Men-ish. Because
of course, that's what you grew up on. Yeah,
we loved them, and actually, at one point, like, we actually sold it to Malibu Comics. I don't know if you guys remember Malibu
I
Comics.
do remember
Yeah.
Malibu. Yeah.
And we were well on the way of doing the comic, and then Marvel bought Malibu just for their coloring system and closed them down.
And Malibu was actually the first publisher for Image stuff, right? Wasn't it through Malibu?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
And Malibu, my first published comic was through Malibu. It was what was an Ultra Force?
Oh!
Issue of Ultra Force.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I actually came up with a a team called Wildstorm when I was like 8. So that came out, I was like, oh.
Yep.
But they had Prime, and God, there was a lot of cool characters.
Firearm.
Yeah,
which Kelly worked
Firearm.
on.
That was cool.
But yeah, I mean,
You
it was
did?
just
You
yeah.
worked on
Kelly
that? Oh, that's
did
awesome.
Firearm for a long time with James Robinson,
Yep.
and it was just like constantly creating stuff and trying to write it, but at the same time, like I think what you run into as a young creator is, you're not getting published, so you kind of like have those doubts and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Right.
And you got to
Like any entrepreneur.
right. Yeah, you don't know what you're doing, and you don't understand why things aren't working. You know,
Right.
when you're young, you're like, I don't understand why people don't understand. I'm brilliant. and then you go back and read those scripts, and you go, I'm not brilliant.
If anybody wants to do comic books and you take your work, especially artists, to like Comic Cons, get ready to hear no a lot.
Oh yeah.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It hurts the soul. I had Neil Adams tear my stuff up.
Newer items
Yeah.
will tear you up.
Oh, I had to go down. This is San Diego Comic Con, so we took a bus down to Tijuana, so I had to get drunk that night. I was like, I couldn't deal with it.
Well, it's funny that you say that because like when I was at Bo,
Mm-hmm.
we dared a student to take his stuff to Neil Adams because he's notorious for destroying people, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's one of the best stories. I mean, he'd absolutely destroyed this kid, but the kid knew it was coming,
Right.
So he was like, and he came back to class the next day, and he's just like, oh my god, like. I mean, he destroyed me.
It was brutal, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But, sometimes you need... I mean, I don't know if I always agree. There's creatives that think people need that to, like, gauge whether you're serious or not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure... I don't know how I feel about that. I think sometimes people need a little gentler push. But,
Right. Yeah, it's that's the way I am too. Like when I was really young, I was probably like 17, 18, so I was taking my stuff down there, and boy, I wasn't ready for that kind of brutality, because they're just gonna straight up tell you, oh, this is great, or this sucks, or work on this, and this, and I had to. So it took me a while to like really. Oh, they're just giving critiques. Take the good,
Right.
Almost anything in life. You think you're good.
Turn lemons into lemonade. Like, I think it's a good networking thing, because even if you take that constructive criticism, hopefully if it's constructive,
Yeah, right. That's
Some of it, right?
how you take it.
Just a little bit.
then you can learn from it, and you get those 99 no's, but when you get that one yes, and then that's, how the only way you're going to get where you want to be is just keep trying.
And I understand where Neil's coming from because, I mean, like you've already said, like, if you put something out, people are going to absolutely destroy you. They're going to be offended by who you are as a person, even though they've never met you. They read your book and they're like, "You're a horrible person," this kind. But if you can't take a little bit of that, you don't need to be doing it because I mean, it will destroy you.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah, I meet a lot of great talent, and then they'll go get their stuff looked at. Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. They tore me down, and they'll stop.
Yeah,
and I've seen a lot of artists that are that way. They just take it all so personal, and you can't. And that was, I mean, it's hard for me because I'm always kind of that self-doubter. Like, what if they don't like it? And then somebody storms at me, rips me apart. Even in day jobs, I was like, I might seem I can take it on the outside, but that just eats me up on the inside. So a lot of comic stories came out of that.
Oh yeah.
So that's cool. So 17, you decided to do your own stuff. When was your first big break? Like
25, I did the Ultra Force from Malibu.
All right.
And I mean, the Malibu story is a little bit insane because they bought this idea that Cully and I had. And so we're going to do a mini series that's going to launch into it. My editor's talking about a toy line.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
I mean,
that
they're
is
already
so
like, we think
amazing.
this is going to be great. You guys are doing some new interesting stuff. And Malibu got bought by Marvel. And I'd already written the first issue. And Cully was going to start it just as soon as he finished his
right
thing on
there.
Firearm, right? They bought it, closed it down. It's done.
And they still have those properties, and they never
yeah.
used them. They never
Yeah.
used any of those characters.
No.
Yeah.
And so I won't lie, that destroyed me.
Oh, I bet.
Like, I mean, I was like, I'm done. 2 years of like not touching anything. And then, it starts, there's that little voice in the back of your head that's like, you need to be writing comics.
Yeah.
I'm
going to show them.
Yeah. And so then it was just building it back up. And, then I started writing a little bit more. Went to college late. And when I came out of college, that's actually, Kevin Gard and I knew each other through comic shops, and we went to the same college. And that's when we started, hey, this is what Marvel's doing wrong. This, all the
Right.
quarterback, armchair
Armchair,
quarterback, they're trying to like, hey, I could do this better. And we talked about that for months at a time, where we just have fun talking about comics and how we do it differently.
Yeah.
And then one day it just kind of hit us both at the same time. And I was like, yeah, we do a lot of talk. You know, like maybe we should just jump in and see what happens. And that's how it all got started. And we've been doing it ever since. Yeah.
That's cool.
Especially since he had a kid, he was like, "It's now or never."
Oh well, he was at that. Yeah, his wife was having. I mean, she was pregnant when we decided to do this. And yeah, and it's just like he's like, I don't know if this is smart. Yeah.
Are they still married today?
Oh yeah, they're still married. Yeah, and have 3 kids. So, but no, I mean, it was just learning how to do the independent thing versus like obviously we don't have the money to pull off something like, hey, let's do 3 or 4 monthly series.
Right.
You know, trying to figure out how to make all that work with 2 guys that honestly didn't know what we were doing. You know, we kind of knew the basics of comics because we both worked in comic shops before. But, you know, like trying to figure out like, oh man, how do you get a comic published these days? How does this work?
Right.
You know, and
I mean, it's a tough business too, especially well, now you got the internet, so you can, you know, you can reach people faster. But back in the day, you know, you had one distributor. Well, back then there was a couple, but then they started buying each other out. But yeah, I mean, but basically, if I'm wrong, you know, you submit your book, and they decide. The distributor decides if they want to put it out at all, and if they do, then they get 50% off right off the top of whatever the book sells.
Oh yeah.
So there's not a lot of rich people in comics unless you're one of the big guys.
Yeah, you got to love comics to be in comics.
Yeah, you have to live it, love it, and commit to it, because if you're in it for the money, it's probably not the best biz to be into.
Yeah.
But now everything from the comics, licensing.
I mean, there's a potential of like you were talking about Red with Cully.
Yeah.
I mean, Cully made. I can't even imagine how much more money off of just the fee they paid him for Red versus what he got paid to do the comic and even with royalties and stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, there was 2 movies.
Yeah,
so,
2 movies with Bruce Willis in it. You're not doing too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the comic book dream right there. Yeah.
For real. That's why it's like try and follow your heart, because you never know where it could take you. It could be 10 times better than you even imagined.
Well, it's like us. I mean, we're all the same. I mean, we just went through the nose, you know, toughened up, got a thick skin, and just never gave up. And even people around us are like, what are you guys doing? Why don't you go get a day job? Well, I did get a day job, and I worked for, plumbing and electrical for, since I was 18. So I'm not going to say how many years that was, but now I just quit, and this is what I'm going to do. This is what makes me happy. And I've had a lot of people tell me, no, don't do that. You're throwing away your stability. You're throwing away, a pension or whatever else. And I got to do it. You
got to be kind of stupid, hard-headed.
You do, and you got to be stubborn. Yeah, I think that's what every comic creator has. It's just like, okay, everybody's told me no, but I still want to do it. Yeah. And you got to have that mentality.
Because I hear a lot of times, like we heard it at school, but my mom said the exact same thing to me. What's your plan B?
Right.
Right. Plan B is always going to be easier than plan A.
Right.
And that's a problem. Because I've done the same thing. Like, I have my plan B, and then plan B is where you're making your money, and it's harder to find time to do plan A.
Right.
And so like a lot of times the kids would come to this it was an art school, and their parents would be like, well, they don't want me to, they don't want me to get an art degree. They want me to get something engineering or medical. And I'm like, having a plan B is a horrible idea. Because if you have plan B, it's always easier than the stuff. And so like, you'll do that instead.
Yeah.
And I think it can hurt your motivation.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's why it's like you got to follow your heart and what you love, because even when you're doing what you love, there's days you get tired and you're like, do I even want to do this? But it's like, yeah, I do. It's what I love. What else am I going to do? And it's like if you go home and you work an hour for yourself, 2 hours for yourself, and then eventually 8 hours, and then eventually you can fire your boss and do what you love. But if you don't try, then you'll never know.
Exactly. All right, guys. Well, we're going to take a break right now. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks.
Creative groups that I've met with, and the fun part about all of that is we find out like we're actually all doing the same thing. We just might not seem like it. So like writing music, creating movies, doing photography, writing comics, it's all the same thing.
Yeah, I was wondering, what's some advice that you give to people that are trying to follow in your footsteps?
Honestly, it's just do it. Stop waiting for somebody to give you validation. Stop waiting for somebody to give you permission. In this day and age with like web comics and the internet, and you can print on demand now like 10 issues of your comic. You don't need anybody's permission to make a comic. Just start doing it.
Welcome back, everybody. Legacy League Productions here with my partner in crime, Chris Newhart. And once again, we have Doug Wagner, comic book writer, creator, extraordinaire.
Yeah.
Fencer, ballerina. No, I don't know.
Some of those are true.
Well, we just we want to talk about a point with General Mills. You did something really cool with that.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of work for DC Custom at the time, and a lot of people don't realize like there's two different. Well, there's many divisions of DC, but the comic stuff you see are the regular comics, and then the custom stuff where they do stuff for like the NFL and all that kind of stuff. And so they approached me about doing a Flash Justice League story, that featured the Flash. that was going to be in General Mills cereal boxes. And you're like,
Wow.
wow, yeah, that's like, you're like, what?
Yeah.
And so, like, it took me a little bit to get my head wrapped around it, because you have to worry about, like, audience, because it could be a 5-year-old.
Right. All ages. Yeah.
Or a 45-year-old, right? Like eating Captain Crunch or whatever it might be, like. And so, I mean, it was really fun trying to come up with a story that was very, it had to be as I hate to use the words generic, but in little ways it had to be, because you didn't know if these people knew who the Flash was or the Justice League, that kind of stuff. So you have to kind of approach that. And it was fun coming up with a story that was just basically the Flash, because I've always loved the Flash.
Right.
And
so which one, Barry Allen, or was it?
Oh, that
Wally?
was Barry Allen.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the tougher part was, like, I loved the Flash, trying to write the Flash. Like, totally, because, like, when you're dealing with the fastest man alive, right? Like, what does he fight? Because in my head, like, how can you defeat that, right? Like, he's unstoppable. So it's kind of fun trying to come up with something to that and include the Justice League in it. Then after we'd done the story and turned it in, I think they don't tell you this on purpose. They were like, oh, by the way, we're only printing 10 million copies of each. You're like,
Whoa.
No big
like,
deal.
You don't even think about it, right? You're writing for cereal boxes. You're like, oh, that's no big deal. Like, but then like 10 million, like, holy cow.
That's legit.
Yeah. I mean, so I have a comic that has 10 million copies out there somewhere. It's just amazing to be even a part of that.
So does it irritate you when you look at, like, the biggest selling comics? X-Men #1 is 8 million. They're like, dude, I already beat you.
No.
Where's my stuff?
Did you ever think when you were a kid eating cereal that you're gonna have your stuff in there one day?
Never. That's not one of those things I had on a bucket list checklist.
For real? I can't even imagine that.
There's a bucket list that you know, and then there's a bucket list I think you don't know. And
Right.
sometimes things fall on your lap, and you're like, "This is on my new bucket list." Like, I didn't realize I was gonna have something in a cereal box that some little kid might be reading. Like,
That's
it's
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah. That's how I said when I was younger. I'm gonna do podcasts. Yay!
Because when you were a kid, there were no
Exactly.
we didn't
Yeah.
have podcasts yet.
And even when people approach me to do this kind of stuff, I'm like, my voice sounds dumb. I don't look right. I'm behind the camera. I write and draw. You guys do all that stuff on the other side of the camera. And I blame you. You're one of the people I blame.
Heck yeah.
Drives me to this.
When Chris contacted me, he was like, "Hey, we're gonna do this podcast. Like, do you want to be a part?" And I was like, "Sure." And then I thought about it for a second. I typed back. I was like, "Is this like on camera?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "You do understand I have a face for radio, right?"
Right.
Like,
That's what I say too.
I'm like, well, we got microphones.
Anybody brave enough to put us in front of a camera,
Oh, yeah.
you're
I
fine.
should be
Don't worry
okay,
about
okay.
it. You're like the model face up here. So that's got to be crazy.
Oh yeah,
So
it was a crazy fun. I mean, I got to work with the Flash TV show and the
oh wow.
the Arrow TV show, and what was the other one? Person of Interest.
Oh yeah.
Creating like little mini comics based on the episodes for social media.
Wow.
And so that was a blast, because I was getting the episodes before anybody else.
Oh, that's
because I
way
had
cool.
to write them weeks
For
in
real.
advance. Yeah, but it was an interesting, like, the weird part about that was you were on call, so you didn't know when they were going to wrap up the episode,
Oh.
and so they sometimes would send me the episode at like 10 o'clock at night, and it had to be turned in by 6 a.m. the next morning.
Oh.
So it was yeah.
How
So-
many pages you doing?
Oh, it's just one. Usually it's just one.
Oh.
But still, you had to like watch the episode, figure out what you were going to do as this one pager.
Whoa, that's
Yeah,
pretty
And there was-
constricting.
yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I did it for 4 years for 4 years for Arrow and 2 years for the Flash. But there was those nights where like you're really tired.
Yeah.
And you're like, ding. No. But everybody I worked with was great.
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. And you did that for 4 years?
4 years.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. That's amazing.
I did a lot of stuff for the custom stuff, like World of Warcraft was one of them.
Oh,
so I did
okay.
one of the World of Warcraft graphic novels, and then stuff for the NFL. I did an episode of like their NFL comic kind of thing, and it was just so interesting, all the stuff. I did one for Practical Jokers. Have you guys seen the Practical Jokers
Oh,
TV
yeah.
show? So I had to do one for them. That was kind of interesting, like dealing with those guys, because you get their notes back and they're like, wouldn't this be funny? Wouldn't this be funny? Wouldn't this be funny? And you're like, okay, let me see if I can get that all in a comic script. So it was all that stuff was fun.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be a fun one to do. Get a whole different change from the regular comic stuff and go into that. Yeah, that'd be cool. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, what's some advice that you give to people that are trying to follow in your footsteps?
I mean, we kind of covered a little bit about it earlier. Honestly, it's just do it. Stop waiting for somebody to give you validation. Stop waiting for somebody to give you permission. In this day and age with like web comics and the internet, and you can print on demand now like 10 issues of your comic. You don't need anybody's permission to make a comic. Just start doing it. Don't overanalyze it. Don't overthink it. write the comic you want to read and do it.
Heck yeah.
That's, I mean, it's, and I know that makes it sound like oversimplified, but the only thing stopping you from doing it is you.
Right.
You got to keep it simple.
Oh yeah.
The best. I met Chris Carter, who did the X-Files, and he comes up to me and says, "You want to be a writer?" He goes, "Then write. You're a writer. It's that simple. You know, you want to." He says, "You're a writer right then. What, you want to be a successful writer? Then keep writing." You know, and then I can't remember who else it was. Someone had some advice. It was, you know, while you're sitting there playing video games all night, yeah, well, creators aren't doing that right now. They're working. So I was like, God, that's, in fact, I think that was Bendis that said that.
Might been, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was him that said that. So it's funny that he said they got him on a video game.
Yeah. he does play. Yeah.
Well, he does. He can afford it now.
Oh yeah.
So then you go to Malibu, and then you go to DC, and then you're doing this custom stuff, right? So what brought you to Image to do all this? And before he answers, one of the coolest things on here, it says, "This is the weirdest bleep I've ever read. I love it. It's from Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead."
Yeah.
This is the clout this guy has. He has the blurbs coming from the creator of The Walking Dead.
I kind of knew Robert. Actually, the first San Diego con we ever did with the ride, the first issue of the ride, we actually were in a booth beside Robert Kirkman, Ryan Otley, and Corey Walker. Mm-hmm. Nobody knew who any of us were at this point.
Wow.
I mean, so like we shared, you know, and Ryan Otley actually did the first sketch in my wife's sketchbook ever. And this is way back before anybody really knew any of us. You know, we were just kind of like guys trying to make things happen.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of met Robert the first time.
And Ryan Otley did Invincible with Kirkman.
What, like 15 years?
Yeah. I can't, like 100-something issues. Yeah, that's crazy.
Insane.
Yeah, that's to do that kind of run is pretty amazing. As a writer-artist team staying for the whole thing. Well, obviously Robert owned it, so, but to keep the team together for that long, there's only a few that's done it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the ride started at Image, going back to like you talking about Image, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of had that connection, and I didn't work for Image for a couple of years, and then I came up with this crazy idea for plastic. Pitched several ideas to Daniel Hilliard, and Daniel was like, "This is the only one I want to do. I'll do it for free if you'll let me." And so we start working on it, and knew Eric kind of from, you know, the days of working with the ride and stuff, but we weren't like super friends or anything. You know, it was just like one of those things where we kind of knew each other, and we managed to make a meeting with him at San Diego. And so I had 3 books that I was going to pitch him, and I'm like, I don't know if he'll take any of them, but we're going to pitch them. And Eric's a phenomenal guy, and like when you get into a room and he's pitching, he has the best poker face of anybody I've ever met. So like you can't get anything off of him. You can't tell if he's excited about it. So we're showing him plastic, and he's kind of flipping through, and we had already finished 3 issues. So he's like flipping through them. He's like, "Okay, what else you got?" And I'm like, "Well, we got this other book, and this is The Hard Place." And he's like flipping through that. He's like, "Okay, where do these stand?" And so I tell him, you know, where we're at. The Hard Place had been completely finished. We did all 5 issues. Plastic were 3 issues in. Mm-hmm. And he looks at me and he goes, "So can we schedule Plastic for 3 months from now?" And you're like, "What?" Yeah. So
like, yes.
Yeah. Well, at first your brain,
even though you have no idea how.
Well, your brain at first kind of clicks off, and you're like, I don't know, you know. But then you're like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Okay, we're going to put Plastic out first, and then the last month of Plastic, then we're going to do The Hard Place." And so that's how kind of I got back in with Image, and then luckily I've been able to sit down and meet with Eric a couple of times, and we got the ride, Burning Desire, and we're working on some other things together too. But it's like, you know, it was just one of those weird things.
That's
and then
cool.
That was at San Diego. That Tuesday I got back, I get an email from Robert Kirkman.
Wow.
Eric had told him about the book, and he loved it. And he said, "Can I give you a pull quote?"
Oh, so it was his idea.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
it wasn't our
pretty
idea. It was
amazing.
his idea, and I was like, yeah. You know, it's the same response, right? Like, yeah.
So the moral of the story: always say yes, even if you don't know what you're doing. Say yes.
Yes.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, hey, why don't you tell us about the ride? What's that? Is that Adam Hughes?
Yes, that is.
Oh
Adam
my
Hughes.
goodness!
For real.
Yeah, you can keep pulling those out because I think he's going to be blown away by the talent we got on that book.
I don't. I have no life, but just.
So the
comics.
ride's kind of an anthology.
Right.
So the first book we did back in, what is it? I can't remember, 2012, something like that, 2004. And basically when we came back and we wanted to do the 15th anniversary, and I said, if we go down this road, I want to see who we can get, like, to do these backup stories in the ride. Daniel's going to do the main story. He'd done Plastic with me, so you know, that's a done deal. Him and Laura, and you know, we're like, oh, Chris Bruner, we love Chris Bruner's work. We're going to touch on him.
Grab me that Adam Hughes one.
That's the one.
No, the one right there.
But it's one of those weird
How
stories,
awesome that cover is.
where you end up calling these guys. And so we called Chris Bruner first, and Chris was like, yes. And then I called Cully, and I'm like, hey, dude, we're doing this again. What do you think? He's like, sure. And so then we get to Tom Coker, and I love Tom Coker's work.
His artwork's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
That
And I'm
black
like,
and white abstract he does.
Oh, yeah. If you haven't read his issue.
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's amazing.
No, I got to read it.
I got some notes because I haven't got to actually sit down and read comic books in a long time, and so like I didn't want to get anything confused. But one of my favorite ones was Arnie and Albert, where they came across some voodoo dolls, and one of them was Banana with a Tommy gun. That's a key to Banana.
That's awesome.
Did you pick up on all the sound effects, or actually sound effects from like bananas and stuff?
Heck yeah.
Is that Jay Lee?
No, that's actually Doug Dabbs.
Oh, wow.
I knew Doug from a long time, and I've reached out to him because he hasn't been discovered, and we really wanted to like give him a chance to shine. And so we picked him to do that one.
He did a good job.
Oh, yeah. That
it
cover.
was voodoo-licious.
That is weird. Yeah, I know. And his faces. He got the faces in the smoke. That's awesome.
And then the last person I actually went to was Adam, because I was the most scared to talk to him. I've known Adam for 30 years. And so then I was like, hey, we're doing this. If you have the time, we'd love to have you come back, because he did the original covers for the ride. And he said, yeah, I want to do it. And I was like, what?
That's cool.
And then the scary part is, after all these people said yes, then I realized I was terrified that I had to write a story for them.
Yeah, like all this responsibility starts sinking in.
So luckily, everybody seemed to have a good time, and they all seemed to enjoy their stories. So it's kind of like leaning into their strengths. It's like Tom Coker had done some ride issues before. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Tom, and I kind of had an idea for a story already in my head. And I was like, so what do you want to draw? And he goes, I want to draw a 6-foot Asian female who rides a motorcycle. And I'm like, that's not the story I had in my head. But
we'll make it work.
Yeah, but we'll make it work.
For real.
And so
you reading about that, how you went around to everyone and want to see what they love to do and help get that in there and figure it out so everyone could love what they're doing, and that's the key to anything. And
oh yeah.
Congrats on figuring that out.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Even with Adam, everybody knows what Adam's famous for. He does
the women.
Style. Oh yeah, win-up style. But I think if you read the story, like I told him, I wanted to take him a little bit more bloody. Like, I think if we can use your sexy and put horror in it,
right,
and mix those two, and I think it'll sell better. And of course, that book did fantastic. Number 1 sold out almost.
His name alone, and that would be.
Yeah, Adam's
that's
fantastic.
printing money right there.
Yeah.
In fact, God, what was I looking? I was just reading Adam Hughes stuff. Was it Justice League?
Oh, he's done so much.
Oh yeah. His stuff's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. So you got the right, and then The Hard Place. What was that about?
The Hard Place is kind of like, Kevin's always been mad because I did The Hard Place kind of on my own at first, because we weren't necessarily doing ride full-length features,
right?
And I wanted to do a longer story, and so that's like a 5-issue self-contained story. It's much like the ride, but it's about AJ Gurney. He's a former getaway driver who's just getting out of prison.
Is there any pages you want to show him? Or?
Oh yeah, we take a look at it.
I'll let him take a look at it. And
now, who did the cover on this one?
That's Nick Rommel. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's Brian Stelfreeze.
Okay, that is Stelfreeze.
Yeah, Nick Rommel did the interiors.
This is what I love about Stelfreeze. He does a lot of Batman, but his artwork's just amazing.
Oh yeah, he's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and then we got
Nick Rommel is the guy that did all the interior work.
He did that one too.
Yeah, that's Brian. Brian can draw cars from memory.
Really?
Yes, it's insane.
I can't. Buildings and cars. No way.
I hate him just for that. But it's about a getaway driver. Basically, he gets out of prison. He wants to leave that whole life behind him, and unfortunately, the Russian mob doesn't want to leave him alone. So he gets pulled back in whether he wants to or not. And so you got the Russian mob after him. The police now want him dead. It's like everybody wants him dead, including he's got like 2 guys in the car that kind of, when they're done with him, they're going to kill him. So he's got to try to figure out how to drive his way out of this.
Heck yeah.
So,
dude, you write gritty and street level. I mean,
I
love that. Yeah. I love that stuff in comics. This Doug is the man when it comes to that. He goes right into it. I mean, because a lot of it you don't even really know what the story's about. It's based off the character. So I like that you were so character driven.
Yeah, that's important to me.
Yeah.
I was reading in one of the interviews you did that Vega changed her life. Can you elaborate more on that?
Well, Vega was if you look at the original ride, she was the main character, and then we actually on the 15th anniversary, she's the main character in this story as well. So we kind of catch up back with her after 15 years.
Heck yeah.
Because of that point in my life, like I was tinkering with whether I wanted to pursue creativity or not. Kevin and I had this talk. We invent this book, and Vega's the first character in there. And Vega kind of saved my creative life. Like, if that wouldn't have come around at that point, I don't know if I'd be writing comics at this point.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, yeah, it's one of those real strong, like, she had a huge impact on my life. And so when people were like, oh, what about this character? And you're like, you don't understand. Like, she kind of changed my life. Like, without her, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys.
That's amazing. That's the kind of stuff I love to hear. That's cool.
Yeah, I remember when we were up at Sundance doing our panel and Lawrence saw a cutout of one of his characters. I was like, how's this feel? And he's like, amazing. This person was like a big part of my life. And it's awesome how fictional characters can change people more than real people, you know?
Yeah.
Well, good thing we do comic books, because if not, we'd just be crazy people with a bunch of voices in our head. So now we have an excuse. Hey, we do comic books. So that makes me normal. I'm not going to go to a rubber room, right?
Right.
Well, I might, yeah. But that's the cool thing about it, though, because I get a germ and I just kind of build on it, and then finally all the other pieces come together. But it's usually one character, though, yeah.
Yeah, one character, one scene, or you never know where it's going to come from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what, with this going on, so are you doing other medias with these right now? Are you going to stick with comics? You gonna?
I mean, with me, I love comics, and that's pretty much where I want to hang out. I mean, I've tinkered with screenplays a little bit, but those take a lot more time to get anywhere with, as far as like, I mean,
right, because
I know how to do this, I guess I should say.
Right.
I don't know how to make a movie yet.
But you have the control over this. You know what's what. There's no budget.
Yeah. Well, there's a budget.
Well, I mean,
when you hire Adam Hughes, there's a budget.
Yeah, right. For creators, I bet. Yeah. Let me state that creators, yes, making comics is expensive. Yes. But when the story though, hey, I want to blow up 3 helicopters over New York.
Oh yeah. No big deal.
Yeah. There's no budget on that.
No.
So with the comics, you're sticking with comics. What do you think of the industry right now? That's what I really wanted to ask you.
Yeah, it's always scary. I mean, when you see stuff like Dan DiDio being let go after so many years, and you know, obviously all the rumors start popping up, right? And you're like, oh, Marvel's going to buy DC, or DC's going to go out of business, or AT&T said this is DC's last shot at doing something right. I mean, I guess there's people that are, they're naysayers about that kind of stuff, and they're like, hey, we'll be fine without them. If DC or Marvel go away, I don't think the comic industry can hold up.
Yeah,
I mean, they're both roughly 30% of the industry.
Right.
And right now you can only get comics in comic book stores. And imagine taking a third of an income from a comic book store. Half of those stores are going to close, which means the whole industry is going to collapse.
Right.
So that's scary.
Well, yeah, it's all direct market stuff, because you don't see the spinner racks when we were kids.
No.
When you walk into the supermarket, which is huge. I don't understand why they don't do that anymore. Because that's what got me into comic. My mom would go grocery shopping. I'd sit there and read all the comic books while she's gone. And then I get to pick out 2 or 3 to take home. So, and I love that. It was so important to me. So, and then the big rumor is, I mean, that DC, if they don't do this next round, they fired the main guy.
Dan DiDio, yeah.
I can never say his name right. Thanks. But so and now there's rumors that the Marvel might come in and take over the DC characters, which would be, it's just a rumor. I shouldn't really start. Yeah, but if something like that happened, I mean, consolidate it down. I mean, then Disney's going to have everything from Star Wars to all the characters. But I think DC, I heard a rumor that they're obviously not going to sell Batman. They're not going to sell anything. So they'd license it, which would be weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like Sony and Spider-Man, and
it's hard to say where the industry's. I mean, it's really difficult. I mean, we're talking about the same. I mean, it's books, right?
Right.
Books have struggled through the years. I mean, you remember what happened to the record industry.
Exactly.
In comics, can we still keep doing this, and with just comic book shops, and have the industry stay around for another 10, 20 years? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I really don't know.
It's a tough gig, because you got to get your book first. You got to get it through the distributor. And then once they take their chunk, then it has to go to the store. They make a preview book, go to the comic shops, and then they have to pick out what they want to buy. And of course, they're going to pick X-Men, all the Marvel, DC stuff, all the big names, Batman, Superman. So here's your book nobody's heard of. So you got to gamble that they're going to order enough of those so you can make a living. So that's where it gets really tricky.
Oh, yeah.
But with the internet now, I mean, there's so many. That's it. I think, me personally, I think there's always going to be printed comic books, but I think it's going to be more on demand, and everything's going to go more digital.
I could see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just my opinion, and what do I know? But,
well, I don't think it's going anywhere, because, I mean, it's been around since cave paintings, and Ancient Aliens was talking about how important comic books are. It was like one of the first languages, so it's like, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. We just got to figure out how to
Yeah,
Make
well, I
sure it
hope
doesn't
so.
go anywhere.
Yeah. I hope it sticks around forever because I love it.
For real.
Oh yeah, I think there's always going to be comic books. It's just the way it goes in this digital age. It's going to be really crazy to see, and everything's so insular now. Everybody picks up on demand. So what's big isn't so much what everybody's in their own little universes with their phones and their iPads and all that too. So Netflix, you just pick up and binge. You're not with a group of people. It's not like the movie theater experience.
Right.
So yeah, it's. I think it's like the '70s. Everybody thinks comics are going to die again. That it's going to be that other spark that kicks it and blows it away again. Yeah. But what is that?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
So, well, that's cool. So. What else you got cooking up?
I don't know. Oh, what am I working on?
Yeah.
I do know that.
Okay.
I'm working on 5 new books. I can't talk a lot about them, but I am working on
that's
more
fine.
Brian Selfries.
Awesome.
And it's going to be kind of like a spy genre kind of thing, and we're doing some really cool stuff there. Daniel Hilliard and I, the guy that did Plastic, we're working on something that I think is probably just as disturbing and funny.
Nice.
Yeah,
Cool.
We're already in the 4th issue of that one.
You
As
already have
violent as it is, it's hilarious as well.
Yeah, that's what we're aiming for. We want
I don't
like
know how
a
y'll do it.
horror, dark comedy mixed together kind
Heck
of thing.
yeah.
is what
That's
we're aiming
exactly
for.
what it is. Yeah.
And then Doug Dabbs, the guy that did the final issue of The Ride, he and I are working on a new book that I'm really excited about. And Hoyt Silva, who's actually Brian Selfridge's protege,
Oh, wow.
he and I are working on a book that we're almost completely done with. So that's going to be kind of interesting.
That's cool. So you're gonna do them all through Image?
Oh, it depends.
Okay.
I mean, Image obviously has to approve them. I know
Right.
it sounds crazy, but a lot of times, like, they kind of want to see the whole thing.
Right.
So you have to invest all your money and your time making this book that they may or may not accept.
Right.
And so then you have to, at that point, if they turn it down, you have to come up with Plan B.
But isn't it cool though? You probably have your own track record, so you know that at least a couple is going to get picked up, or you have those kind of relationships.
Oh, yeah.
But then you can go shop to the other ones, other publishers, and say, hey, I got this,
Yeah.
this, and they're like, oh yeah, we know, yeah, it's Doug, yeah, sure, man.
Yeah.
We love to.
I mean, and I can call Eric,
Right.
and say, hey, we're working on this book. What do you think? And he'll give me like a go ahead as like, and it's not like a permanent, like full go ahead, but it's like, hey, go ahead and start working on this. And if it's as good as you say it is, we'll publish it.
That's awesome.
And so there's that, but at the same time, if it's not something he's looking for, he can be like, listen, this isn't for Image, and then you're like scrambling to go, oh, wait a minute, I had these plans,
Yeah.
But you have to, that's part of the industry. You just have to
Exactly.
be really flexible on that kind of stuff.
For real.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring that up because that's the reality of it. That's young creators, people that want to get into comic books. That's it. That's sometimes you're putting thousands of dollars into one book before you even know it's going to get published. So how much do you love doing comic books, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I always bring up is like you got to think about what you're willing to sacrifice to make
Right.
your dreams come true, because you're going to have to give up something. It's time.
Right.
It might be time with a family.
Food.
Food. It might be food. It might be sleep. It might be
Sleep.
video games. It might
Yeah.
be TV. It might be your
yeah.
favorite movies. Like, what are you willing to sacrifice to make this happen?
Exactly.
Because it's going. You have to give up something. You have to.
And there's a lot of hours alone.
Oh, yeah.
Especially as a writer.
Yep.
I mean, I can't even have music playing. I just got to be right into
Oh yeah,
it.
me too. Yeah, I have to be.
But penciling or inking, that's another thing. Then I can put my tunes on and kind of.
Yeah, I'm always
zone out.
jealous of artists because they
Yeah.
always tell me like, "Oh, I watched 3 movies while I was
Exactly.
working." I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't watch 3 movies while I'm working. It's an interesting.
I'd be in the household and they'd turn on when I'm writing and they turn on music. I'm like, no, turn that off. It's just like it's weird. I listen to music all the time, but yeah, I need that quiet and let the characters talk. All those characters in
Yep.
my head.
The voices in your head. Yep.
Yeah. So that's but it's amazing. I mean, the process of it all. Everybody thinks like, oh, it's Rockstar. You go to Comic Cons. You're doing panels and you're all that. It's like no. I'm eating mac and cheese and staring at our table for 12 hours.
Because I can tell you, my house, I know who's responsible for doing the laundry. And it ain't my wife.
Yeah.
It's like well, you're sitting in your office typing, like, you can do the laundry while you're doing that, right? And you're like, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's-
Can you
so,
walk
yeah.
the dog? I guess.
Yeah, walk the dog, make mac and cheese. Yeah, it's interesting. Like people, yeah, like you said, they're like, oh, this is all great, and you're famous, and you probably go to parties. You're like, dude, I work 80 hours at home by
Yeah,
myself.
right, exactly,
It's
yeah.
not that exciting.
I guess the only good thing is you don't have to commute. You don't have to sit in
Oh,
traffic. Yeah.
Well, there's positives and negatives,
Negatives,
to that.
right.
It's like when you work at home, something like doing the laundry becomes a task that's always in the back of your head while you're trying to work.
Right. Uh-huh.
Or the doorbell rings, or your dog needs to go to a walk. That kind of stuff. And it's like,
Get out of the zone.
and you're always 5 feet from your office.
Mm-hmm.
So at 4:00 in the morning, when it's calling to you, you're like, I gotta go to work.
Yeah. Do you work a lot at night? Because that's
Oh, yeah.
what I do. When everything's quiet, and I'm like, okay, now I can do this.
Yeah, but I mean,
Chris
the
isn't
problem,
calling me all day on the phone. I can get stuff done now. Yeah. So what? So 80 hours is what you work writing?
Oh
usually?
yeah, at least
wow.
yeah.
That's
Well,
cool.
and you can, with writers, I think our problem is I'm not sure we're never working.
No, exactly right.
I'm always thinking about my stories. I'm always thinking about what else I could be doing, how I could get better. Those kind of things.
So what's the process? Do you like? I mean, like sometimes I know what I want in a story, but do you still go through the plot? Do an outline first, synopsis, before you start a script? Or
Oh yeah, I'm maybe too meticulous. So I start with I've got to know what the one sentence pitch is almost right out of the gate.
elevator pitch.
Because if the one sentence pitch isn't interesting, neither is your story.
Right. It's the hook. You got to have
there's
that
some-
hook.
Just
If you
like
don't
in
know
the
what it
music
is.
industry, if it's not in the first
Right.
30 seconds, it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same way with comics. Yeah, you got like the first 2-3 pages. If you're not hooked, you're never gonna get that reader.
Right. Then I go to a paragraph, and then I go to a full summary, and then I go page by page, and then I go panel by panel.
Oh wow. See?
Yeah, and then I write the script.
Oh wow. Now are you doing that with every issue?
Oh, well, I do that. I do a page by page before I write the script for the first
Really?
issue. Yep.
Wow. See, they're talking about there's no right way to do it
Oh,
or
there
wrong
isn't.
way.
No.
Yeah. That is amazing. That's what? I'm not that detailed to be honest with you, but that's amazing. I never thought of doing it that way.
Well,
I know, I've seen it.
Yeah, yeah.
well, if you go with Virginia, I wanted the first and the last word in the book to be Virginia.
It was. I know. I noticed
For
that.
So I don't know that if I don't plan it out for me.
Right.
It's like one of those things I have to make sure.
Yeah, like
from-
TV shows, from what I understand, they have like the last 6 episodes planned, and then they work their way backwards. And I'm like,
that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah. You got to kind of know where you're going.
Well, yeah.
yeah,
That makes
To
sense.
plant some seeds and stuff.
right.
Yeah, the destination. Then you got to put everything into get. Yeah, usually like when I do a story, I have a vague ending, and then I know what I want to hit by the time I get there.
Yeah.
But that's really fascinating to me. I don't know why I'm so fascinated by that, but the way you do that's I'm going to try that just to see.
Now, it does slow me down. I won't lie.
Right.
But to me, I need it.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to me to know that stuff before I start writing a script.
So if you're doing like a limited series, like 5 issues, like Plastic or The Short Riot or something, do you do that for the full issues first, like issue 1 through 6? Do you do the paragraphs?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
and then
By that point, I know page by page from issue 1 to issue 6.
wow,
Yeah.
that's so cool to me. I love it.
That's just mind blown.
I know it is. It kind of is.
Well, I think, you'll see, teaching and then doing it myself as well. I think one of the biggest mistakes you make in comics is you think you have more room than you do.
Right.
And so a lot of people get to the last issue and go, oh,
Then I try to rush it.
I don't have enough room to finish this off properly.
Dang.
Captain America punches him in the face and it's over.
Right,
You're
exactly.
reading it going, what? Yeah. So I learned early on, I need to make sure I have that space planned out. I don't want to get there and be like, oh no, I don't have enough room to do everything I wanted to do here.
Yeah, I do like an overall outline, but I don't know. It's fascinating. I got to really try that method. Yeah, it's just cool. That's probably the coolest thing I've heard in a long time.
Glad
Besides,
we got it on camera.
Well, hey, Doug, we appreciate you coming and hanging out with us.
I appreciate you
That
guys
was
having me on. I
probably
really do.
real.
Yeah.
That's probably like the fastest hour ever.
For real.
And everybody say, no, you do it in 30 minutes. Like, we're talking comics. We got this covered. We
Yeah.
got it down. Well, hey, Doug, best of luck to you,
thank
man.
you,
And
man.
let us know
Yeah.
when stuff comes out.
Yeah.
And we'll have to bring you back when you got new stuff out.
I would love it.
Yeah. We love hanging
For
out with you,
real.
man. So, everybody, we appreciate you watching today. And
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Much love and respect.
Doug, thanks again for being here.
My pleasure.
And we're out.